Welcome back to another deep dive. I have a question for you to start things off today, and I really want you to be honest with me here. Have you ever just sat there? Maybe you're staring at a blank wall, or maybe you're stuck in traffic just watching the brake lights in front of you, and you really thought, really thought about what a moment actually is.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is a very dangerous question to ask on a Monday.
It is, isn't it? But I don't mean a second on a clock. I'm not talking about the mechanical tick-tock mechanism of time or the numbers flipping on your phone screen. I mean the actual stuff of right now, this instant. What is it made of? Is it a container? Is it empty space?
I mean, most people, if you really press them, would probably say it's a fleeting, empty container that things happen inside of. A blank stage where we just act out our lives.
Exactly. We think of time as this empty track we run on, but today we are looking at a source that takes that idea, crumples it up, and throws it directly into the trash.
Oh, it does more than that. It incinerates it.
It really does. We are looking at a perspective that suggests something completely different. What if right now isn't empty at all? What if a single moment is actually an entire universe? And here's the part that just completely melted my brain. What if what we consider to be our entire history, the Big Bang, the dinosaurs, the Roman Empire, the internet, your breakfast this morning, is just a single thought in a much larger consciousness?
It's a staggering concept. It really reframes existence, not as a timeline, but as a pulse.
My brain is already starting to itch, and we haven't even introduced the specific documentation yet, but that is the exact vibe we are going for today. We are going deep, but we're going to keep it loose, we're going to keep it fun, even if things get a little existential and spooky.
A little existential is the understatement of the century for this one. We are literally looking at the fundamental nature of reality itself.
So let's introduce the guide for this trip. We are diving back into the Seth material. Specifically, we are looking at session 343 of the early sessions, book 8.
And context is everything with these sessions, so let's set the scene a bit. The date of record here is May 22, 1967.
I love the specificity of that. It grounds it. It's a Monday night, 9 p.m.
Imagine the setting. It's 1967 in Elmira, New York. You have Jane Roberts, who is the medium for this personality known as Seth, and her husband Rob, sitting in their living room. It's intimate, it's quiet, there's probably cigarette smoke in the air. They aren't in some high-tech laboratory or a mystical cathedral. They're just in a living room on a Monday night.
And yet, in that quiet domestic space, they are about to receive a transmission that essentially dismantles the laws of physics as we know them.
Right, it's the contrast that gets me. Ordinary setting, completely extraordinary information.
So our mission today is to unpack 3 main pillars from this specific session. First, we need to wrap our heads around Seth's concept of action. And spoiler alert, it is not what you think it is. It's not just moving your arm.
No, it's a total redefinition of the substance of the universe.
Second, we're going to talk about the physical weight of thoughts. And this is the part that might make you a little paranoid about what you're thinking right now.
It's a game changer for how we view mental health and personal responsibility.
And third, and this is my absolute favorite part because it comes out of nowhere, we're going to discuss why a multidimensional entity thinks swearing might actually be good for your soul.
It's a surprising turn, but when you follow the logic of the physics, it all connects perfectly.
Before we jump into the deep end, we do have to get the mandatory housekeeping out of the way. This deep dive will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
That's right. And it's important to note that we are exploring the ideas presented in this specific source material impartially. We aren't necessarily endorsing these concepts as absolute scientific truth, but we are diving into the fascinating philosophy contained within the text. We're here to see what the document says and why it matters.
We are just the messengers unpacking the box. Okay, let's get into it. Seth starts off this session with a statement that sounds like a riddle you'd find on a scroll in a dungeon. He says moment points are indeed composed of action experiencing itself.
A dense sentence. You really have to read it twice.
I had to read it 4 times because when I hear the word action, I think of a verb. I think of movement. I think of me picking up a coffee cup. That is an action. But Seth seems to be using the word as a noun, like the cup itself is action.
Precisely. This is the first hurdle in understanding Seth's physics. We are trained, largely by our language and our culture, to view the world as a collection of static objects, nouns, that occasionally move around. A chair is a thing. A person is a thing. A planet is a thing. But Seth is arguing that reality isn't made of things at all. It is made of events. It's made of energy and motion.
So a noun is really just a verb moving slowly enough for us to see it.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Think about the air in the room right now. To you, it seems like empty space. But physically, we know it's a chaotic storm of molecules bouncing off each other at incredible speeds. It's all action. Seth says action is, and yet forms its own experience. It's self-perpetuating. It doesn't need a thing to act upon. The action is the thing.
He uses an analogy about the physical body later in the session that I thought was really helpful for this. He says your body is a series of actions.
Right?
Which is wild because I look in the mirror in the morning, sometimes with regret, sometimes with acceptance, and I see a solid object. I don't see a series of events. I see a face, I see skin, I see something that seems pretty permanent.
But look closer. Or rather, look over time. Your body isn't a statue. It's more like a waterfall.
A waterfall, walk me through that.
Think about it. A waterfall looks like a solid object from a distance, a white streak painted on a mountain. You could point to it and say, there is the waterfall. It looks static. But if you get close, what is it really? It's water crashing down. The water that makes up the waterfall this second is completely different from the water that made it up a second ago. The form persists, but the material is constantly cycling.
It has a persistent form, but the content is constantly changing.
Exactly. It's a flow. It's a process. Your body is the same. Cells are dying. Cells are being born. Blood is pumping. Neurons are firing. You aren't a thing. You are a happening. You are an event that is currently taking the shape of a human.
I am a happening. I like that. It makes me feel less static. I should call in and say, sorry, I can't come to work today. I'm too busy being a happening.
Let me know how that goes over with HR. But this concept of action experiencing itself gets even trippier when Seth brings up the idea of origins. Because if everything is action, well, when did the action start?
Oh, right. The first action. The primal cause.
Humans are obsessed with beginnings. It's hardwired into us.
We really are. The Big Bang. The Garden of Eden. Once upon a time. We need to know who started the car. We need to know who pushed the first domino. It drives us crazy if we don't have a start date.
And Seth basically says, stop looking. You're never going to find it. He literally says you will never find a first action, and only within your system does such a search have any meaning.
That is so frustrating. It's like telling a detective, hey, don't bother looking for the suspect. The crime just happened forever. It breaks our logical framework.
It is frustrating for our linear minds, which are built to understand cause and effect within time. But think about a circle. Where does a circle start?
It doesn't, or I guess it starts everywhere.
Exactly. If you're an ant walking on the rim of a cup, you can walk forever and never find the beginning of the rim. Seth is suggesting that action, this fundamental energy of the universe, automatically builds upon itself. It doesn't need a push to get started because it is the push. It creates itself.
So the search for a creator or a Big Bang is just a meaningful concept for us inside our little camouflage system, but outside of it, it's just nonsense.
Essentially. It's like a character in a book asking what happened before page 1. Well, nothing happened before page 1 in the book, but the book exists in a library, in a world, in a universe. Seth is trying to get us to look outside the book.
Speaking of outside the book, Seth drops a line here that genuinely gave me chills. He says, what we see and experience physically is a mere fraction of what reality is.
Mere fraction. That's humbling. It suggests we are barely scratching the surface.
Right. He talks about intensities and depths that we can't perceive. He says the nature of action causes depths in terms of intensities that you do not understand, but these intensities build up to the appearance of physical matter within your system.
This is where the physics gets fascinating.
Okay, let's break that down. Intensities building up. Is he saying that matter, this table, this microphone, my hand, is just thick energy?
Yes. Think of it like layers of paint or lacquer. One layer of clear lacquer is basically invisible. But if you put 10,000 layers on top of each other, suddenly you have a thick amber object you can touch. You can knock on it. Seth is suggesting that there are dimensions of action overlapping and intensifying until, boom, they become dense enough to be recognized by our 5 senses as matter.
So we aren't seeing the whole picture. We're just bumping into the parts of reality that are thick enough for us to feel.
We are basically ghosts walking through a much simpler version of a very complex reality. Or, conversely, we are the dense parts of a very fluid reality. We only perceive the crust of the pie, not the filling.
That is a wild image. But this leads us directly to the second major point of the session, which I think is the most mind-bending and perhaps the most practical part of this deep dive.
The weight of thoughts.
Be careful what you think.
This is where the chilling vibe really sets in.
Seriously. Okay, so usually We think of thoughts as private, right? They're wispy, they're inside my skull, they are ephemeral. If I think about a pink elephant right now, that pink elephant doesn't exist anywhere but in my imagination. It's not real.
That is the standard materialistic view. Brain chemistry fires, you have a subjective experience, end of story. Seth disagrees.
Strongly disagrees. He says thoughts take electromagnetic patterns that have their own materializations as universal systems.
Let that sink in. A thought has an electromagnetic reality. It's a structure. It isn't just inside you.
He goes on to say thoughts have color and shape as well as electromagnetic structure and intensity. Just because I can't hold my thought in my hand doesn't mean it's not an object.
It's an object in a dimension we aren't currently focusing on. Think of it like a radio signal or Wi-Fi. You can't see the Wi-Fi signal in this room. You can't reach out and grab the data packet that carries this deep dive to the listener. But it is physically there. It has a shape. It has frequency. If you have the right equipment, you can see the data moving through the air. Seth is saying thoughts are the same. When you think, you aren't just processing information, you are constructing something. You are building a structure.
And this is where he uses that breathing metaphor, which I found equal parts beautiful and terrifying.
It's a very powerful image.
He says you form the reality, the shape of thoughts, in much the same way that you breathe.
And here is the kicker, he adds. And you have as little control of them once you have created them as you have of your breath.
That is the scary part. I don't think about exhaling CO2. I don't sit here and concentrate on pushing air out of my lungs. I just do it. And once it's out of my nose, it's part of the room's atmosphere. I can't grab it back. I can't say, oops, didn't mean to exhale that molecule.
Exactly. We are constantly exhaling reality. We are manufacturing these electromagnetic structures, these thoughts, all day long, effortlessly. And Seth calls them offspring.
Offspring, like children.
Yes. He says thoughts as offspring have a strong effect in all systems. Once you think it, it goes off and has its own life. It leaves the nest. It interacts with other energies. It doesn't just vanish when you stop thinking it.
So if I'm sitting here stressing about, I don't know, an awkward conversation I had 5 years ago, looping it in my head, I am effectively birthing a little electromagnetic monster and sending it out into the multiverse.
In a sense, yes, you are creating a structure of anxiety.
Right.
But it goes further. Seth talks about camouflage reality. He suggests that what we see as physical objects are just reality conforming to our specific system's camouflage.
Right, he says, they may not be perceived as physical objects, but as reality that conforms to the particular camouflage structure within.
So your thought, let's say your thought of a cheeseburger, or your thought of anger, might not look like a cheeseburger or a red cloud in another dimension.
What does it look like?
Well, Seth hints that it changes the material of that system. So in another system, the energy intensity of your thought might be perceived as a weather pattern or a geologic formation.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a solar system, depending on the intensity.
Wait, so my hunger can be a thunderstorm in Dimension X?
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
We are creating the weather of other realities with our mental output.
That is a lot of responsibility. I feel like I need to apologize to Dimension X for my morning commute thoughts. I've probably caused hurricanes.
It really highlights why mindfulness isn't just a self-help trick in this framework. It's a form of environmental protection. You're polluting or beautifying other realities with your mind. It makes you realize that your internal life is actually an external factory.
It connects back to that idea of action. If thoughts are action, and action never stops, then our minds are basically perpetual motion machines generating new worlds.
And that brings us to the scale of this whole operation. Because if we are generating worlds with a breath, how big is the actual universe?
This leads us to section 3 of our dive. The universe as a single moment. I'm going to read the quote because I want to get it exactly right. Seth says, your entire physical universe represents one moment point in a whole overall design.
Just pause there. One moment point.
So, the billions of years of cosmic history, the formation of stars, the cooling of the Earth, the evolution of life, the dinosaurs, the ice ages, the internet, all of that is one moment.
In the scale of the larger consciousness Seth is describing, yes.
Yeah.
Imagine a movie reel. To the characters inside the movie, there is a long, dramatic history. There's a beginning, middle, and end. They fall in love, they fight wars, they grow old. But to the projectionist holding the reel, it's just one reel. It's one unit of movie. It exists all at once in his hand.
That makes me feel incredibly small, but also weirdly huge.
How so?
Small because, well, my entire life is a fraction of a moment, but huge because I'm in it. I'm part of that density. I'm part of the real.
Seth elaborates on this by talking about distance. We tend to think of space as this vast, conquering emptiness. He says, in studying your physical universe, the distances seem great only because of our own point of reference.
Right. We look at Mars and say, wow, that's millions of miles away. We look at a distant galaxy and say it takes light a billion years to get there.
But if you zoom out far enough, if you leave the physical camouflage system, the distance between Earth and Mars might be non-existent. They are just two aspects of the same thought.
Two aspects of the same thought. So space is an illusion.
Space is a construction. It's part of the stage set. Let's go back to the dream analogy. If you were dreaming tonight, you might dream that you were running down a long, dark hallway. In the dream, that hallway is 50 feet long. You get out of breath running it. Your heart beats faster. But where is that hallway actually located?
Nowhere. It's in my head.
Exactly. The distance in the dream is real to the dreamer. It functions as distance, but it doesn't take up physical space in your bedroom. Seth is suggesting our physical universe is similar. It's a thought in changing aspects of becoming.
This sounds like we are trapped in a simulation, like the Matrix. But Seth doesn't make it sound robotic or computerized. He makes it sound, I don't know, organic.
It is organic. It's consciousness. It's not a computer code. It's a soul code. And he says we can glimpse this. We aren't totally locked in.
The inner senses.
Yes. He mentions that only by using the inner senses can you obtain a viewpoint that is free of your own system. The inner self knows it creates action.
So deep down, beneath the ego, beneath the I need to pay my bills and buy groceries self, there is a part of us that knows this is all a play.
A part of us that knows we are the playwright, not just the actor. And that knowledge changes everything.
Which brings up the ultimate question. If we are the playwright and the play is made of action, what happens when the actor leaves the stage? What happens when we die?
This is one of the most comforting and active descriptions of death I've ever encountered in metaphysical literature.
Seth is very blunt about it. He says, what you term death is an action. It is not the end of acts.
We usually think of death as the end. Fade to black. Silence. Static. But if the fundamental rule of the universe is action experiencing itself and action cannot stop, then death is impossible in the sense of ceasing to be.
He actually says the self is more active after death.
He does. He says the self at death is indeed more active as a rule than before, and the resources of the self are used to greater advantage.
Why would we be more active? I always pictured the afterlife as resting, sitting on a cloud, playing a harp.
Think about the physical body. It takes a tremendous amount of focused energy to maintain this camouflage. You have to eat, sleep, pump blood, fight gravity, repair cells. It's exhausting being physical. It's like wearing a heavy lead deep-sea diving suit.
It is a lot of maintenance.
When you drop the body, that energy is released. You take off the heavy suit, you suddenly have all this action available to explore other intensities. You aren't resting, you are unleashed.
And he even says the physical body's stuff continues to act. Decomposition is action. Returning to the earth is action. Nothing ever stops.
It just changes form. And this leads to his take on reincarnation, which is distinctive.
Yeah, it's not the standard, I was Cleopatra in 30 BC, now I'm a podcast host in the 21st century linear timeline.
Right. He calls reincarnated selves probable selves.
Reincarnated selves are no more than probable selves, choosing to experience various forms.
This connects back to the universe as a moment idea. If all of time is just one big moment point, if the movie Real exists all at once, then reincarnation isn't about moving linearly from 1800 to 1900 to 2000. It's about exploring that same moment from different angles simultaneously.
The costume analogy, I love this one.
Exactly. Imagine a single, massive party. You go to the party dressed as a clown, you mingle, you dance, then you go out the back door, change, and come back in dressed as a knight. Then you come back in as an astronaut. To the people at the party, it looks like a series of different guests arriving over time. But to you, it's all one event, and you're just trying out different ways of participating in it.
That is a very relaxed way to look at existing. We're just trying on different costumes to see how they feel.
It takes the pressure off, doesn't it? You don't have to get it right this one time. You're just exploring the possibilities of the moment.
Relaxed but profound. I like that vibe. Speaking of relaxed, this is the point in the deep dive where we have to pivot. Because if we just stayed in the universe as a single thought headspace, I think we'd both float away into the ether.
We definitely need some grounding.
And apparently Seth thought the same thing, because halfway through the session, after explaining the electromagnetic structure of thoughts, the illusion of time, and the nature of death, he pivots to giving marriage counseling and lifestyle advice to Jane and Rob.
It is jarring, isn't it? But it's so characteristic of the Seth material. He oscillates between the cosmic and the domestic without blinking.
So the context here, Rob and Jane, who Seth refers to as Rupert, implying a larger male identity for her soul, are doing these pendulum sessions. They are trying to work on their psychological health. They're trying to figure out why they feel certain ways.
Right. And Seth has some very specific prescriptions.
Prescription number one, go dancing.
Yeah. He says, you should both go out dancing now.
I just love this image. Here is this non-physical energy personality explaining that our universe is a speck of dust in a larger design, and then pausing to say, hey, you two need to go twist.
But why? Why dancing? It's not just for fun, though fun is important. It connects back to the physics we just discussed.
Oh, so?
Action. Seth emphasizes flexibility. He told Rupert to visualize himself in highly flexible forms of activity, running, jumping, or dancing.
Ah, so if you are feeling rigid mentally, you need to move physically.
Exactly. The body and the mind are not separate in Seth's view. Remember, the body is just action that looks like matter. If your self-image is getting stiff, if you're taking life too seriously, physically shaking, the body dancing breaks up that rigid energy. It reminds the camouflage self that it's fluid.
It's hard to have an existential crisis when you're doing the cha-cha.
It really is. It grounds the energy, puts you back in the flow of action.
Okay, so prescription number two, swearing.
This is the one that surprises people.
Seth analyzes Jane's habit of swearing when drinking. And you'd expect a spiritual teacher, an ascended master type, to say, oh, such low vibrations, you must stop using foul language.
That's the puritanical expectation. That's the religious baggage we carry. But Seth says, the swearing when he drinks is a direct result of the fact that he tries to deny aggressive feelings otherwise.
So she swears because she's being too nice the rest of the time.
Exactly. Suppression. Seth is big on validity. If you feel aggression and you stuff it down because you want to be a good spiritual person or a polite lady, that energy doesn't disappear. Remember, thoughts are objects. You're creating a pressurized container of aggressive objects inside your psyche.
And then you have a glass of wine, the inhibitor drops, and boom, F-bombs everywhere.
Right. The swearing isn't the problem. The swearing is the safety valve. Seth is suggesting that admitting the aggressive feelings in the first place is the healthy path.
So Seth says swearing is good.
Seth says honesty is good. If honesty sounds like a curse word, so be it. It's better than the polite dishonesty of repression. If you deny the feeling, you create a blockage in the action. And blocked action leads to illness or explosion.
But he doesn't just say, go ahead and yell at people. He offers a specific solution for this aggression.
The garden solution.
The garden should be begun as an outlet and a creative one for aggressive feelings.
This is brilliant psychology. Think about what gardening actually is.
It's digging, it's ripping up weeds, it's chopping roots, it's hacking away at the earth.
It is destructive acts used for a creative purpose. You are physically exerting force aggression against the earth. But the result is a tomato plant or a flower. It grounds that electromagnetic intensity into the physical soil.
So instead of birthing a thought monster of anger that floats off to dimension X, you put that energy into the dirt and make a salad.
Precisely. You transform the action. You don't stop the action. You can't stop action, but you channel it. You use the aggression to fuel creation.
There's one last piece of advice he gives about walking home.
Yes. He finally realizes the advantage in walking home.
What's the read on that?
It seems metaphorical, though it might have been literal for them at the time. It's out doing things the hard way. Sometimes we want the shortcut, the car ride, the easy answer. But walking home implies feeling the distance, experiencing the transition.
It's about being present in the journey, not just teleporting to the destination.
And accepting boundaries. He mentions doors closed. Sometimes, for psychic health, you need to close the door. You need to walk the path yourself. You need to establish your own space within this massive universe of action. You need to know where you begin and the other ends, even if ultimately it's all one thing.
So let's recap this wild ride, because we have covered a lot of ground.
It's been a journey from the cosmos to the Cabbage Patch.
We started with the idea that reality is action experiencing itself. There are no things, only events.
We learned that there is no beginning, because action builds on itself automatically.
We discovered that thoughts are real electromagnetic objects that we breathe into existence, creating weather or worlds in other dimensions.
We shrunk the entire history of the universe down to a single moment point in a larger consciousness.
We redefined death as just more action, a release of energy.
And we ended up in the garden, ripping up weeds and dancing to stay flexible.
It's a lot to take in, But if I had to boil it down, it feels like an invitation to take our internal lives much more seriously.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we are powerful creators. We aren't just living in the world, we are forming it, moment by moment, thought by thought.
You are not a passive observer. You are an active generator of reality. You are the projector, not just the audience.
And that reality is much, much bigger and much more malleable than we usually give it credit for.
If these ideas spark something in you, if your inner senses are tingling, don't just stop here. We are just scratching the surface of what's in this session, and this is just one session out of hundreds.
We highly encourage you to go to the source. Read the words yourself. There is a resonance in the original text, a certain rhythm to Seth's speech that is hard to capture fully in conversation.
This deep dive was based on the Seth material, specifically the early sessions, published by the New Awareness Network. You can find these books and a whole lot more at their website.
That's sethcenter.com.
Visit sethcenter.com, the early sessions. Support the preservation of this material. It's mind-expanding stuff, and it's absolutely worth having on your shelf.
And keep an open mind. You never know what you'll find when you start looking at your own thoughts as offspring.
I want to leave you with one final thought today. A little something to chew on while you're stuck in traffic or washing the dishes later.
Let's hear it.
We talked about how our thoughts are offspring that go out and change other universes, that we are constantly breathing out reality. But if that's true, who or what might be thinking you into existence right now?
Wow. That is a thought that will keep me up tonight.
In the best way possible. Thanks for diving deep with us. See you in the next moment point.